Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll talk a lot about the New Orleans Pelicans as they're getting ready for the Golden State Warriors in the semifinal action of the NBA Western Conference playoffs. Boy, does that sound good, huh? Also, the New Orleans Saints preparing for the draft, the first round on Thursday, tonight, also on Friday and Saturday. We'll talk a little about that as well. Great guests for you tonight, as always. Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports is on the panel along with Brett Martel, the Associated Press. Looking for a great hour of sports talk. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. As always, very much appreciate your time, but mostly for this week because this is the busiest week in sports here in the city. With, again, the Pelicans, the Saints, the Zurich Classic. We'll get into that before the end of the show as well. Everything that's going on right now. Oh, by the way, there's something called Jazz Fest out at the fairgrounds. But again, I know guys are really, really busy. Thanks for coming down and joining us tonight on the show.
Glad to be here, man.
Chris, tell us about Fox 8. You guys last night had a great documentary for Jim Henderson. You had your draft preview show, which is always fantastic. Tell us a little bit about what's going on over Fox 8.
Yeah, we've got a ton going on right now, and as always, you can watch that on Fox 8, but we've got a ton of multimedia platforms, whether it be Facebook and Twitter. You can follow me at Chris Hagan TV or Chris Hagan Fox 8. And then, of course, the Final Play app is a one-stop shop for everything draft, NFL, Saints. We've got a lot of coverage from Dallas, obviously covering the Saints as well tonight. And then the Fox 8 News app and fox8live.com where you can find all of my Pelicans coverage. So there's a ton going on, and we're getting you this information, whether it be video analysis, blogs, whatever you want, fox8live.com. Check it out. And you're on your way to Oaktown to be able to cover the Pelicans of Golden State as well, right? That's right. Big series coming up. Never been to Oakland, so looking forward to it. Yeah. And did a great job, by the way, covering the Pelicans out in Portland. Fantastic job by Chris Hagan. Welcome back, Brett Martel, the Associated Press. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with you and, of course, the Associated Press.
Yeah, well, AP is based in New York. I'm based here, covering everything that major that goes on here. So this week means I'm running back and forth over the Huey P. Long Bridge between the golf tournament.
No frequent
and the
flyer
draft
miles there, though, right?
Pelicans practice. No frequent flyer miles, but.
At least it's the new bridge and not the old bridge.
And frankly, the way AP is set up, the writer that's based in California will cover those first two games. So I will get, the Pelicans have practice tomorrow, then they leave town, and then I'll just be able to focus on draft and golf.
Beautiful.
So.
Well, again, as I mentioned, very busy week for those that are in sports this week. Thanks again for coming down. Guys, let's start with the Pelicans, rightly so. It's hard to believe. I've been doing this now 16 years, and I've never been in a situation where we're on the eve of the draft or we're on the day of the draft or even weeks leading up to the draft where it's not draft talk 24/7, all Saints. The Pelicans have stolen the spotlight here in New Orleans. You had an LSU Tulane baseball game in the city last week, and that was overshadowed as well. I mean, the Pelicans have really caught the sports psyche of New Orleans, and it's good to see that people really have Pelicans fever, and hopefully that will bode well going into next season for season ticket holders, etc. There's a lot of excitement surrounding the Pelicans. They sweep the Blazers in 4, and Chris, I didn't see that coming. I picked the Blazers Blazers in 6 or 7. I thought the Pelicans would give them a good game. I didn't think that they had enough to win the series. I didn't think they were physical enough to win the series, to be honest with you. Boy, was I wrong. They were the most physical team on the court. They had a game plan like no other to stop Lillard and McCollum, and you were there firsthand. Just from the TV, and I told you this when we were on the radio show, I've never heard a crowd in Portland that, again, follows the Trailblazers that quiet. The Pelicans quieted that crowd in Portland, and what a great series for the Pels.
Yeah, I mean, head coach Alvin Gentry even said he doesn't really blame anybody for not picking them. I mean, Portland's a team that at one point in the season won 13 games in a row and did it beating some pretty good opponents. And so to say you were going to sweep a team like that, whether the matchup worked in the Pelicans' favor or not, which it definitely did, you just don't expect to be able to take a guy like Dame Lillard out of 4 consecutive games or keep C.J. McCollum as quiet as they did. But that's what they did, and that's exactly how they kept the Moda Center in Portland very quiet. They never let him get going. Anytime there was a big 3 or a little Portland 8-0 run. I think there was maybe even a 10-0 run that they silenced at one point. They were able to shut them out. They were able to come right back down the floor and hit a big shot, take a timeout, regather themselves. And I think there's a lot to be said for the leadership of a guy like Rajon Rondo, and then Anthony Davis, who's said he's finally seeing how to lead, and that these guys just wanted a leader. And after DeMarcus Cousins went down, especially, he had to step up into that role. So I think it goes a long way. His maturation process since the beginning of the season has been outstanding. I talked to Dell Demps about it when I was in Portland. Just seeing Anthony Davis grow, seeing him become not only a better player but a leader, I think goes a long way. And we saw it in the series against Portland.
Yeah, no doubt. Brett, on the flip side, you've been at every game at the Smoothie King Center, and we've never seen a crowd like that, maybe in the history of the organization, since it moved here from Charlotte.
Yeah, I know that the year that in 08, the Chris Paul led team went 7 games against San Antonio, and I do remember some very good crowds for that. But maybe the passage of time makes it harder to compare. Mm-hmm. But I had the same impression. Part of it was just, I think, the combination of an 8 o'clock start, which allowed a number of fans maybe to get a little better lubricated than they otherwise would have been, combined with the red T-shirts. Mm-hmm. And, when a bull sees red, it charges right. Maybe humans have some kind of similar, I don't know what it was. I mean, the place looked fantastic in all red, and it was 8 o'clock, and the fans, of course, I think were also very inspired because they knew not only was it a big game, but they had seen him take 2 games in Portland, so they were, in full throat, and it was pretty crazy. And
even on Saturday, though, at 4 o'clock with that tip, right?
It was. I mean, it wasn't as crazy as the Thursday game, but it was still really good. Because at that point there's blood in the water, and it's like they're going to close it out, and they did, and it was really the most impressive environment I believe that I've seen since 2002 when the NBA came back to the city. This
team has really grown a lot this season. Again, we've talked about the kind of the stock market season where you're going into this with 2 big men with Boogie Cousins, Anthony Davis, and then of course Boogie goes down right around the time it looked like they were kind of putting it together. They get a little bit of a dip now because of trying to figure out who they were, and then they reinvent themselves once again. They rip off 10 straight. Then they had a little bit of a lull toward the end of the season where they lose 4, and now they're on a 9-game winning streak once again, and playing really, really, really fun basketball to watch.
Well, the reason I think that it was a little bit surprising that they swept is because, when they won those 10 games in a row, most of those teams were teams that...
Non-playoff teams.
Yeah, were non-playoff teams. It wasn't like when they won 7 out of 8 with Cousins, where they won at Boston and Kyrie Irving was playing, and then they won at home the game Cousins got hurt, but not until the last seconds, against Houston, who had everybody. Yes. I mean, those are the 2 most impressive wins of the season, was that stretch with Cousins. They come back, and the 4 games they lost before they finished the season on a 5-game winning streak included, I believe, Portland was one of the teams where Damian Lillard took over at the end.
Yes, Golden State as well.
But they beat Golden State, right? But they lost to Portland, they lost to Oklahoma City, they lost to some other playoff teams, and that's why you'd think, okay, well, when they play the playoff teams that are a little bit ahead of them, Utah, whoever, they tend to struggle. When they play the teams behind them, they can win. So you figure Portland, maybe they can play with them, but they probably won't win that series. Instead, what we underestimate is first of all that the chief defensive coach Darren Erman, the way he can get guys to lock in a 4-game season that you cannot do in an 82-game season when you're playing someone different every night, and how effective that was. How mobile defensively the two big men are, Mirotić and Davis, and what that allowed them to do against Portland is that they could have one guy up high defending, the pick and roll and leave him up there, and the other guy could be on Nurkic. And they were both moving well and committed to defense. And what happened is you were getting Damian Lillard walled off one way, and Nurkic wasn't able to play his usual game. I think he was also a little hurt.
He was.
So McCollum ended up being their leading scorer because of that, but that wasn't good enough for Portland to win one single game.
Yeah. Chris, talk about Darren Erman's scheme, because I think it surprised a lot of people, and maybe a blueprint on how you beat the Blazers from now on.
Oh, I certainly think it is. I think, one of the questions that the Blazers head coach Terry Stotts got asked after the series was, and he wasn't able to answer it right away, obviously, but is this Blazers team built to have long-term success the way they're trending? And I think Darren Erman showed you that effectively you can shut them down. And I think they sold out on Damian Lillard. He said it after Game 3. He's never been defended that way. They literally forced him to give the ball up. He says usually the big comes out and will stay with him long enough for the guard to recover, but the big will trail off, but he never trailed off. They stayed with him. They forced him to pass the ball, and look, they're going to let anybody else beat you. Aminu's going to knock down a couple threes. Zach Collins might knock down a couple threes. Nurkic might battle Mirotić in the paint for a couple, but there's never going to be that one point in a game where Damian Lillard's going to take over like he did in the regular season in that last meeting. And so it worked. I mean, when you take a team out of that and you have active hands in the passing lanes, they took away so much from Portland, and to discredit Portland, they didn't pass the ball well. They didn't really start getting rid of the ball any quicker until Game 4, and by then it was a little bit too late. Yeah. C.J. McCollum got his, but again, a 30-plus point effort from McCollum wasn't enough to beat the Pelicans, especially when, on the other end, Portland had no answer for Anthony Davis and no answer for Jrue Holiday.
Right. Well, and again, Al-Farouq Aminu, who again was drafted by the Hornets, I said at the beginning of the season, the beginning of this of the series, I wasn't even really worried about him because he's been such an inconsistent NBA player. A better player in Portland than he was in New Orleans. He's grown, but still an inconsistent player. They left him open. He made them pay, but I guess the feeling was, you know what, we'll let Aminu beat us. We're not going to let the rest of the Blazers beat us. The thing that surprised me the most, though, Brett, was the lack of adjustments by the Blazers to counteract what the Pelicans were doing to them on defense.
Yeah, well, the one thing about the blueprint, not everybody has guards who can defend like Jrue Holiday or big men who can move like Davis. And Davis is 6'10", he's not a 7-footer, but he's got a really good wingspan, and he can run and he can jump. And Mirotić was really committed to defense in a way I hadn't seen him committed during the regular season either, and really aggressive with the rebounds. And then, Solomon Hill also, when he rotates in, he's coming back from an injury, but he's a very good defender, and as often last year would defend other teams' top scorers. So, they have guys who can play defense, and it's, it was just really impressive. And I don't know, I think that Portland didn't make any adjustments, but in just 4 games, maybe it was hard, given the Pelicans' personnel, for them to figure out what adjustment was going to work.
Yeah. Chris, what's your take on that? Because that was the thing that's a surprise. I expected a different game plan in 2. By the time they got back to New Orleans, I expected them to have figured this out. Yeah,
well, kind of like Brett was saying, there's only so much I think you can figure out with your personnel. They never really had a third outside scoring option outside of Aminu getting hot every now and then, or Zach Collins hitting a couple. Evan Turner being out for a game didn't help. Mo Harkless dealing with injury didn't help. So there was only so much they could change in terms of how you're going to run your offense through Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum. And you got to look at the way that the Blazers play. And despite some numbers, I think Damian Lillard's around 6 assists a game. He's not a guy that makes other people better, like a Chris Paul, who, we saw it firsthand with the Pelicans or the Hornets for years, what he was able to do in terms of making people better. You see it now, what Rajon Rondo, true point guards, can make other people so much better. The way the Pelicans run their offense through him and the looks and opportunities that he's able to get other guys. Portland doesn't have someone who can do that. It's what the Pelicans will now have to defend with a guy like Draymond Green, who the Warriors run a lot of their offense through him, and he can make a lot of people better if they get Steph Curry back. He can do the same thing. But the Blazers didn't have that. They don't have that guy that if you take him out of the game scoring, he can do other things. And again, they forced the ball out of Damian Lillard's hands. And so that was a huge adjustment. And it is a discredit to them that they didn't make any adjustments. But in a series like that, when you can hone in for 4 games, that's what Drew Holiday said he loved about it.
Yes. For
4 games, you got these guys, and that's all your focus. I don't know if you can do that for 82 games. I don't know if in the middle of a, Jazz, Thunder, Blazers stretch, you have time to hone in like that. But, man, when all you have time to do is watch film on these guys, see how they try to adjust, and then try and cut them off, it makes things a lot tougher. And like Brett mentioned, the Pelicans, and not just Niko Mirotic, not just Drew Holiday, it wasn't one guy. Everybody was committed to defense. You got to think, a guy like E'Twaun Moore didn't get the appreciation he probably deserves, but think about if you're out there on the floor and you see Drew Holiday absolutely manning up and shutting down his man and taking away everything from a player. If you're E'Twaun Moore and you get matched up on that same guy, you're not going to want to be that weak link that the Blazers try to attack. And so I think everybody's effort, from Moore to Darius Miller to Solomon Hill, everybody was committed to defense. Mirotic even said it at one point. The offense will come. I'm committed to what I'm doing on defense. That's where my effort's needed, and you saw that throughout the entire roster.
Well, and you also saw great pace, which again, the Portland tried to stay with and couldn't. And again, getting contributions from everyone that hit the floor for the Pelicans, offense and defense.
Yeah, Rondo had 53 assists in 4 games. And I think most teams would take that from their point guard.
You better believe
but he still made teams pay when they sold out to stop somebody else. And he would have those slicing dribble drives and, really heady layup shots, and then every now and then, it's something he didn't work, and so we pulled up for 3, and he hit that long 3 in game 3. It was,
that's when you knew it was over.
Yeah. So everything was working. Of course, there's that whole playoff Rondo phenomenon, and now people are starting to joke about the playoff Drew thing. These guys, it's funny because when they play Golden State is better, and Golden State should win. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about all these instances throughout my life in team sports where I've seen a really great team who was a little hobbled and had kind of a rough season playing against another team that was up and coming and extremely hungry and playing their best of whatever sport they were doing at that time of year.
Yes.
And it turned into a very high drama affair. Yeah. And I could very easily see this series going that way.
Oh, I think it will. I really do.
And Golden State could be on their back foot a lot.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, I think that obviously, look, if you watch the NBA, if you're watching what's going on, it's hard to bet against Golden State. They're the world champions. Pelicans are in a tough spot. The Pelicans are playing the best basketball they've played all season long. They're a hot team. They're a confident team. I think this thing's going to go 7. We'll get into that in just a moment. When you look at the byproduct of this, again, what happened on the court. Now Alvin Gentry, his option is picked up. There's rumors out there they're trying to sign him to a long-term extension. No word on Dell Demps. You got to believe that Demps is going to return again. So now you have a situation where you've got some stability now with the coaching staff in the front office. The question is, can you hold on to Darren Erman? Can you hold on to Chris Finch?
Yeah, I think that is a big part of the equation, and Gentry gave his staff a lot of praise, as he should, throughout that series and the job that they did on both ends of the floor. But like you mentioned, I think all of a sudden the franchise is on so much better footing because of what they've done. And I think people are starting to see Alvin Gentry's vision a little bit. Now, granted, this isn't the team he had that vision with. It still came to pass as far as the pace and the tempo and the type of basketball, the type of fun basketball they wanted to play. So his vision worked out, and you have to give credit to Dell Demps for being able to get the right pieces in, especially, again, when DeMarcus went down, you just knew it was downhill, especially the way they reacted and, the losses that came after that, 5 of 6, I believe, and then all of a sudden they get Mirotic, a little bit of a rocky time, but they catch fire, and I think everybody's in a comfortable place right now. Drew Holiday is in a great place in his life, and he's just having fun. He's out there playing basketball with no worries. I think Nikola Mirotic is in the same thing, has his family here, and so it's all coming together for him, and it's amazing how quickly it can happen. But as I say, winning solves everything.
All right. Your thoughts on the coaching staff returning and also Dell Demps?
Well, Gentry is, the different styles of coaches, and Alvin, is not a strict system guy. He's kind of a personality guy, and he tries to put guys in position to succeed and give them the latitude to be who they are. And when you look at players like DeMarcus Cousins and Rajon Rondo, who's, Rondo had a reputation of being a very mercurial player who had personality conflicts sometimes with teammates and so forth, and several of his recent stops didn't work out. But Rondo seems to really love it here. He's on a one-year deal, but I wouldn't at all be surprised to see him come back. And the players, when they have coalesced under Gentry, it's looked really good. So, he's got an option for one more year that's been picked up, and so it's still not a long-term thing at this point.
Right.
And it'll just be interesting to see. I mean, next year's team will look different than this one just by virtue of whether or not they bring Cousins back, too.
What do you think happens there? Because Zach Lowe this week of ESPN said that they were mulling over the possibility, instead of giving him a max deal, to go 2 to 3 year prove-it-to-me deal. I'm not sure how Boogie would feel about that. When you look around the NBA right now, there's only a handful of teams that would have the cap room to actually give him a max deal. Of course, the Pelicans are paying more than anyone else. With the type of style they're playing now, the up-tempo style that Gentry sold to the Pelican fans when he came to New Orleans, it doesn't seem that Boogie Cousins is a fit in that style. Now, he is a great player, one of the best at his position. This team would probably be much better off in this Golden State series if Boogie Cousins was on the floor for them. But this is a different team without Boogie Cousins. What happens there?
Well, it's apparent to me that they really do want him back, and they're going to make a strong effort to bring him back. I'm not exactly sure. There's a lot of kind of leverage games that go on with some of these reports that get leaked. But it's been made apparent to me that they're interested in having him back, and that they think that the notion that the team is better without him is ridiculous, or ludicrous, I think was the word that was used. So, I understand that they have played really well since he went out, and they've been very compelling.
It's a different style.
Yeah, it is a different style.
Right.
But the hope, I think, has to be, if they're going to make the effort that they've led me to believe they're going to make to bring him back, is that when Boogie's been sitting and watching all this, it's become evident to him what kind of, not wholesale changes, but adjustments, substantive adjustments he can make in the way he approaches handling the ball, maybe cutting down on turnovers, and maybe not having everything go through him like it has been.
I think it's got to go through Rondo.
Yeah, if Rondo's back.
Right.
And also how he approaches defense and moping after he initiates contact and doesn't get the call, and then misses the shot, and the other team is 5-on-4 the other way.
Yeah.
If he can make those adjustments and comes back, then this team can really be something else.
Oh, I agree. Chris, what's your take on the future of Boogie Cousins here in New Orleans, especially the way this team has played without him?
Well, I think one of the things that a lot of his teammates, the Pelicans, have mentioned is that they're glad he's here, because for the longest time he's just wanted to make the playoffs, right? And that was one of the most disheartening parts about him going down due to injury, not being able to play in the playoffs when it was very apparent they were headed that way with some of those wins, like Brett mentioned, against the Rockets and Celtics. And so now he's in that playoff atmosphere. He saw the Smoothie King Center. I'm not 100% sure of the list of teams that can offer Boogie max money, but what's going to another situation that you have to build from the ground up, or maybe have to find chemistry with the coach and players when you've got guys like AD and Rondo and Drew, and guys that clearly like Boogie and have gotten along with him here. It's how much do you, and obviously money's a big thing. I mean, I'm not telling a guy to take $20 million instead of $30 million or whatever you can get, but you've got to look at what you can build with the Pelicans, and you see, across the league in these superstar-built teams, not everyone is making the same amount of money, and so you might have to take a little bit less, but you can, by doing that, compete with teams like the Warriors, like the Rockets, like the Celtics, and that's how these teams are built now. So I think the jury's still a little out on how the Pelicans are without him against elite teams, obviously, because they're playing. I think they're playing a little bit above their average right now, and obviously it's the playoffs, and some teams can turn on that switch. Rajon Rondo can turn on that switch in the playoffs. So I think they're playing a little bit above their average right now, and I also think we haven't seen them in this fully reinvented top form of themselves against the Rockets or the Warriors yet. We saw them now on this 9-game win streak against the Warriors, and I think that's how a lot of these games are going to go, where it's going to come down to putting yourself in a situation to win games at the end. But I'd like to see how they perform for 4 games at least, and I think the series goes probably 5 or 6 against the Warriors before I would make any judgment on whether they're better or not without Boogie, because I don't believe they're better without Boogie. But I think that you got to try and bring him back, and they will.
I'd like to pivot to Drew Holiday, because Drew Holiday, you can just see the confidence oozing right now. Offensively, he felt there was no one on the court with the Blazers that could handle him. You saw that down the stretch. He was just taking the ball at will, whether he's shooting a three-point shot, mid-range, or taking it to the hole. Defensively, he's always been a great defender, but now the rest of the NBA's eyes are open to how good Drew Holiday is. Look, I was one of the ones, I'll say it again, didn't think he deserved the contract. He has proven me wrong, like a lot of others. He played like an all-star during this series. He's played like an all-star for the most part throughout the season, with the exception of a hiccup early in the season. Since then, he's been a great player for this team, and they wouldn't be where they are without him right now. Chris, talk about Drew Holiday and what he, again, raising his game during the playoffs.
Yeah, he certainly raised his game, and we talked about that with him Wednesday at interviews, just saying. He said it's just the playoffs. It's just being in that atmosphere that's kind of brought it out of him, his aggressiveness. And he's always been a great two-way player, but I think, it's just kind of snowballed into he's showing the world, and then he's getting the attention, and then you've got to keep putting on after that. And so it's really been a positive effect for him. He admits he maybe does even play better when he is kind of mean and, talking with Blazers fans and pointing at Yusuf Nurkic when he gets dunked on and all that stuff. It's been fun, and I think it's given this team an edge. And I think the whole team is kind of taking that edge. One of the things I always thought about Boogie from what I saw was that he gave them an edge. Drew was kind of a quiet leader. Yes. AD wasn't really a leader. So when Boogie came in, they kind of took his aggressive personality on, and then when he went down, I think that's what hurt him a little bit, because they didn't know who they were getting that edge from. Now they're getting it from everybody. Everybody's playing mean. AD's flexing. Rajon Rondo's doing his bit of talking. Drew Holiday's talking. I mean, everybody has a swagger to them now, and I think when you see the guy next to you do that, it's huge, and Drew realizes what he has to do in terms of being a big two offensively with Anthony Davis right now.
What could you add, Brett?
Well, I mean, they really have looked ferocious in a way that I hadn't seen them look all year. I mean, you saw, plays with Solomon Hill ripping the ball away from somebody in the paint. I can't remember who it was, but the crowd really reacted to that. You've seen the rejections all over the place, and the steals and the tie-ups and the diving on the floor and everything. And it's, basketball in the playoffs, I mean, there's a lot of psychological warfare going on, and it's emotional and it's chippy because you're seeing the same team all the time. And it just seems like, and some of this probably has to do with Rondo's leadership, frankly, and his experience, in these big-time playoffs. But it seems like they know how to adjust their on-court persona to the stage.
Yes.
And it's just another reason why, I'm very curious to see how that affects this series.
Let's hold it there. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the Golden State Warriors series. We'll get into the draft. The New Orleans Saints picking 27th tonight in the first round. We'll also get into some Zurich Classic before we finish up tonight. Brett Martel of the Associated Press and Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports are our guests tonight. I'm your host, Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll be right back.
Air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhardt's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhardt's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or AmcoFenceCompany.com.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports and Brett Martel of the Associated Press are on our panel tonight. Guys, let's talk a bit about the matchup between the Golden State Warriors and the Pelicans. The Warriors won the season series 3-1. Pelicans got the last game of the series when they were playing very good basketball. To me, again, we've seen AD. He's playing at an MVP level. You got to say that right now Drew Holiday's playing at an all-star level. Mirotic has been a godsend to this team. His ability to stretch the floor with again, his long-range shooting. But, again, some of the things that people don't really focus on. Defensively, what he's been able to do, hitting the boards. And, again, just the basketball IQ, understanding where the openings are. I mean, I think it was Game 3, going back door a couple times. Constantly moving. We're seeing that in the offense as well. Rondo, the trust that Gentry has had in him thus far, and the leeway that he's been given, and of course the phenomenon you talked about being playoff Rondo, their big four is playing very well. To me, the key is going to be for them to continue to play like that, but you've got to get something out of this bench where, again, Ian Clark playing against his own team. E'Twaun Moore has been really underappreciated this season in terms of what he's been able to do in terms of scoring and playing defense. Miller, he's got to get his stroke back, and he's got to be a guy that can stretch the defense for the Pelicans, making sure that they can't double down on AD. And I think really, to me, the guy that's got to play well in this series, the guy that's got to earn his $12 million a year is Solomon Hill. They brought him in here to be a defensive stopper. You mentioned last season the ability to shut down the leading scorer on the opposite team. This is a team that has a plethora of scorers. Mm-hmm. I understand he's now kind of rounding himself back into shape. It's time for him to step up and play well. I'm not worried about his offense. He's got to play defense, and he's got to rebound. He's got to be a guy that can be a shutdown guy against the Golden State Warriors. We'll start with you first, Chris. What are your thoughts on the matchup? What the Pelicans have to do here to match up, and I'll get into the depth of the Golden State Warriors in a minute. But just what the Pelicans how they have to take care of their business.
Well, I think they're going to have to weather some storms. I think, especially playing in Oracle. Look, if the Moda Center was level 10, then Oracle Arena is going to be 20. We saw it Tuesday night against the Spurs. What they were able to do when that crowd really gets going, and so the Pelicans are going to have to be able to handle that. They're going to have to fight through some things mentally. You know what kind of trash talker Draymond Green is and how he can get into people, and then you're going to have to be able to fight through some moments where maybe things aren't going your way. For example, one of the things Dame Lillard talked about playing against the Pelicans was that not only were the Pelicans playing good defense, but when shots are falling like they did, it kind of hypes you up running back down the floor, and you're giving that much more effort on defense. And the Pelicans are now going to have to face that against an excellent two-way player like Klay Thompson, a KD who I don't think gets enough credit for what he can do defensively, and a Draymond Green who is a defensive guru in himself. And so things are going to be a little bit tougher on that end of the floor, and if shots aren't falling, they can't let that frustrate them defensively, and you can't lose focus. And I think that's where a guy like Rajon Rondo and Anthony Davis and his leadership will have to come in. Defense is going to get them through. You mentioned Solomon Hill. He's going to have to be huge. He's going to have to play some big minutes. If Klay Thompson's in the game, if Kevin Durant's in the game, and if Solomon Hill's in there, he's going to have to do his job and not let them get too hot. Everybody's going to have to guard up, as Alvin Gentry says, with the size advantage that the Warriors have at a lot of positions as well. So it's going to take another team effort. As good as they were against the Blazers, they're going to have to be that much better against the Warriors defensively.
Brett?
Yeah, I agree with everything Chris said. I'm just really curious to see what's going to happen with Steph Curry. First, how long it's going to take him to get back, and then when he does come back, you look at the way he plays, and particularly his lethal shot. His upper body tends to be pretty quiet when he shoots, and he just has that little wrist snap that makes him so accurate, which means that he's getting a lot of power on his shot from the lower body, and he's got a knee injury. And, if he doesn't have his equilibrium going up for that jumper, I'm just very curious to see if he's the same Steph Curry.
No, I think it's a great point.
And if that's the case, then Erman may be able to design a defense that's more tailored toward limiting KD and Klay Thompson. And then you just have to hope that, Draymond Green or Andre Iguodala or it's
not easy.
No, it's not. I mean, KD, Klay Thompson, Iguodala, Draymond Green. Then wait a minute. Sean Livingston, Nick Young, David West, JaVale McGee. McCaw is hurt right now, but he may be back. Looney's playing a lot for them. Oh, wait a minute. Cook was with New Orleans. He's been playing now in place of Steph Curry, and they got a guy named Bell who I think is going to be an up and coming player. I mean, they are just so deep on this team right now. It's ridiculous the depth that they have.
Yeah, and they and Cook's. Played great against the Pelicans last time. I'm like, wait, is this the guy that's going to cause them to lose this game? But, I think what the Pelicans have to do is hope that they can undermine the Warriors' offense a little bit by wearing them out on the defensive end. Because that can, it's a two-way game, and fatigue is a factor. And, the Pelicans, I think, have a way of making. They've had a really good way in this last series of making teams pay on both ends of the floor, and we'll just have to see if they can do that against these guys.
Guys, they mirror each other. And again, when you look at Gentry and Kerr, obviously going back to Phoenix, Kerr being the general manager, Gentry being the coach. You look at them being Gentry being Kerr's assistant. They know each other inside and out. There's going to be no secrets there. Gentry knows this team. The team knows Gentry. He knows the players, what they like, what they don't like, strengths, weaknesses. And then you look at, again, pace. Both teams want a high pace. You look at that right now. When you look at the Dubs, they hit the boards. They hit the boards hard. They live at the line. Now, whether it's a byproduct of, again, having so many superstars on a team, but again, they feast at the line. The Pelicans are going to have to hit the boards. They got to play as physical, if not more physical than they did against the Portland Trailblazers. And then you got to hope these guys have an off night, because they have so many great shooters on this team. Even if you do everything perfect, they can still knock the shot down, and that can be disheartening.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think they improved on the boards as that series went with the Blazers. Again, credit Mirotic and really everyone for the effort they gave on that end of the floor. Rajon Rondo nearly had a triple-double one night. He pulled in 10 boards. And so they're going to have to be big on that side of the floor. Like the Blazers, the Warriors can kill you with second chance points. Just batting that ball around, you lose your man, and all of a sudden they're dropping in a three. But like you said, they mirror each other so well. They both love to run. They run off misses. Everybody can push the ball. We saw it in the series against the Blazers when Portland would miss a shot. Whoever was coming down with that rebound was pushing the ball up the floor, but especially if Rajon Rondo was in the game, he was getting the ball up the floor, and everybody's moving up the floor with him because, again, you can get assists from anywhere on the floor, and the Warriors are going to do a lot of the same thing. And I think that game that we saw at the end of the regular season between the Pelicans and Warriors, that game could have gone either way. It was who hit more big shots, and the Pelicans did in that game, and I think, again, it's going to be the same way. It's going to be being able to convert those big moments. Going into the Blazers series, Alvin Gentry talked about being able to be in the game in those final 2 minutes, giving yourself a chance to win. A lot of times they were probably able to secure the game maybe a minute before they thought they would, especially in Game 3, obviously. But they played with no fear, and they hit a lot of big shots in those games and closed them out. They're going to have to do the same thing because the Warriors are going to want to get out, push the ball, and run and hit shots too. So that's going to be a big part of it. Which team is knocking down open shots? And both teams have a lot of good shooters, but I think the Pelicans especially have their shooters on.
You got the final word.
Yeah, I'm also just curious about the psychology, like you mentioned, of them having to weather some storms, because it didn't seem, I can't recall in the last 4 games where Portland really made them look bad for an extended period of time. I mean, they did come back from a pretty big lead. Was it in the third quarter, I think, of Game 4?
Yeah, they were very, very physical. It was really chippy.
But they never got the lead. They did get within 1 point, but they never got it. And the Pelicans were at home, and it's just so much easier to rally back from a 1 point lead, if you will. So, on the road in that stadium, if they get down by a lot of points, I'll be curious to see how they handle it, if it affects their swagger at all.
Chris, let's shift gears now to the Saints. And before we get into the draft, of course, with Saints pick 27th tonight. Oh, by the way, let me just say this: Pelicans Golden State Game 1 Saturday 9:30 tip. As far as the Saints go, critique what they've done in free agency. I'd like both you guys to do that, and then we'll kind of morph into the needs and what they may do in the draft tonight, and then over the next couple days.
What I think they did a really good job of is they stayed within their budget. They weren't going to overspend as much as they might have wanted to see Jimmy Graham come back. They weren't going to break the bank on one player, but they also did spend the money on where they felt they had the biggest needs, and a lot of that was defensively with Demario Davis at middle linebacker, Patrick Robinson, a good signing now that he's got his niche at slot corner. Cameron Meredith, I think, is a great signing. If he comes back pretty healthy, and he's a young guy, so he should. I think he gives you a great, valuable weapon, a taller slot guy, and I think that's going to be big. And so the moves that they've made, I think, set them up for a draft where they can go best player available. They don't have to hone in on one guy as much as, obviously, they need another edge rusher. If it's not there at 27, it's not there. If you want to trade up, you might have to mortgage a lot, but you can do that because I don't think there are going to be a whole lot of rookies making this team anyway. So they've put themselves in a good position to do a lot of things that, they're not locked into one spot in this draft.
Your thoughts on free agency?
Yeah, I mean, they could have maybe used another pass rusher.
Hard to find, though.
It's hard to find.
Yeah, and especially at a budget rate, which they were very, very frugal in terms of what they signed.
And so they bring Okafor back. His injury is significant, so there's no telling whether he'll be as good next year as he was this past season before he got hurt. But let's face it, even after he got hurt, I mean, they were already a contender. Everybody understood they were going in the right direction, and it seemed very sensible, all of their moves in free agency. I mean, they made their offense. Jimmy Graham would have been a total luxury. I mean, they didn't need that. Yeah. But they did need to still get a little bit better on defense, at least in terms of depth. If not, I mean, they got better at playmaking, but they could still get better on defense. I mean, the better they get, the more solid they are there, the more margin it gives them for error in every other aspect of their game. And so they can pick the best player available now because generally they're just putting finishing touches on a team that's already a playoff contender.
And guys, I guess some flexibility. When you talk about so many picks in day 3, the ability to use that as ammunition to move up, where they are at 27, if the player that they were hoping for doesn't fall to them, the ability, something they've never done under Peyton, but the ability to move back, maybe get that second round pick back. This could be a situation where I think you had mentioned it. There might not be a lot of room for rookies to make this team, as we've seen in the past, where rookies and undrafted free agents made the back end of the roster. You're looking to be able to bolster depth, but you're also looking to be able to fill some key spots where you have some voids. This could be a year where they're moving around a little bit and maybe packaging picks to go after certain players. That's why I really love 27, because if there's a run on quarterbacks, there's a good chance that someone on defense will fall to you that could be at a position need. Maybe it's the pass rusher, maybe it's a linebacker, maybe it's a corner. Again, all those can use help. On the offensive side, wide receiver, obviously, offensive lineman now, especially with Clemente moving on. That obviously I think is still a need. So I think they're in a really good position right now based on what they did in free agency and what they've done in collecting picks on the back end of the draft that gives them some flexibility going forward to maybe go after the player they want.
Yeah, you certainly can move around, and that will be interesting. I mean, that was one of the things that was interesting about last year's draft was, with the run of receivers early, it allowed them to get Marshawn Lattimore at 11. A couple pass rushers and linebackers went in the 20s. A lot of defensive guys went in the 20s, and they took Ramczyk. So it's a thing where you've got to kind of feel that out. You've got to have a good sense of what's going to happen. It's really interesting to see what happens with those first 5 or 6 picks, how many quarterbacks go, which quarterback goes, whether Barkley goes 1 overall or whichever quarterback does. And I think some of that can affect the Saints, but I still think at 27, like you mentioned, maybe you trade back. I see them being still a little more aggressive than that. I'm not sure. Yeah. But I think at 27, you have a chance for multiple runs to happen, as in a run of quarterbacks early. Maybe then in the early 20s, you have a run of defensive backs and a Jair Alexander or a Josh Jackson goes. But again, at 27, somebody could fall to you. It just depends on how they have them graded. And I think with the addition of Jeff Ireland and obviously a really strong rookie class last year, granted they had a lot more picks, they've done some solid evaluating. And I'd like to think that at 27 they take a pick that's best player available that can also help them maybe fill that need to get over the hump, because they are very close and they're close to the end of probably Drew Brees' window here.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned Ramczyk. Sean said that after last year's first round, he was very emphatic about saying that Ramczyk they had way higher rated than they picked him. Because there were some questions about, is that really what you needed, you know, at this time? At the time, of course, Zach Strief was coming off a really good year, and nobody realized he was necessarily 1 year away from retirement or going to get hurt. And he basically said, you know, yeah, he's not necessarily being brought in to be a starting offensive lineman, but he was just rated way higher than 32. So they will, if that happens again, then that's what they're going to do, and we really have no idea, you know, how that'll pan out.
They've been really disciplined with their board, right?
They have been, and what Mickey says is the position comes into it if there are several guys that are graded relatively close, then it makes sense to have the tiebreaker be position of need. Yeah. And so that's how it'll work in that case. But it didn't work in that case at the end of the first round last year, so we'll just have to see how it shakes out.
I do love the fact. Look, you'd love to be in the front end of the draft, but if you're going to be in the back end, I like 27, and I like the flexibility that they can have there, because you're going to have teams that want to move into that spot. They see a player there, they want that player, and it may give you again a few more options here going forward, guys. Everybody at this point, they've gone out and they've gotten a tight end in Benjamin Watson. They signed Meredith, obviously, the wide receiver. The only thing they really have not really addressed is pass rusher. Those are few and far between even in this draft. You know, if the pass rusher's not there, I don't have a problem with them going inside with a defensive tackle. You know, I think one of the things that I think people kind of glaze over is the Saints' ability to stop the run. They go out and get Demario Davis. You've got a situation now where Sheldon Rankins is constantly getting double teamed. I think it's one of the reasons why they at least flirted with Sue. It wouldn't surprise me if they went interior defensive line if again, the player that grades out the highest there is there at 27 coming from that particular position. Yeah,
and I think that's clearly been a side of the ball that they've been interested in bolstering. I mean, you see in the playoffs, the teams that make those runs, they have some strong defenses, and you see what the Vikings have built and how lethal it can make you when teams can't run on you and you force a team to be one-dimensional. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's where they have a defensive tackle graded. Why not build on the inside? Now, granted, I do think a guy like Onyemata has really improved. Tyler Davison's played well in stretches last year. I think they're okay at that spot. But again, if that's what you have graded and that's where you feel like you can build, and that position is higher than, or a lot higher than, you know, maybe the next group of guys at 27, if you're not going to make a move, why not?
Well, I think if Deron Payne is available, and that might be wishful thinking, but I think if he's available, that's who they're going to pick. Yeah, you got to run to the podium there. Yeah. There's some other guys out there that were mentioned. I had Mike DiTellio on the program last week. He talked about Harold Landry out of Boston College. Obviously, at a pass rusher, the enigma in this draft is Arden Key. I certainly wouldn't go for him at 27, but if you had additional picks and were able to get him a little bit later in the second or third round, depending if he lasts, he might be a guy you take a flyer on there.
Yeah, I'm not huge on Arden Key. I just think it's not just the question marks. It's physically he doesn't look super athletic. I mean, look, his sophomore year, even his freshman year, when he played at a little bit of a lighter weight, he's a freaky athletic kind of guy, the way he can get around some offensive tackles and make plays. And just, I know it's a 40-yard dash, but even in some of those drills, he just didn't look the same at the pro day. And then you listen to him talk. I think he's a 3-4 guy. I think he's a 3-4 edge. And he's talked about, the last thing I saw, and I haven't kept up with him a ton, but the last thing I saw was that he wanted to be a 4-3 end, and I don't think he's got the size.
Yes.
He hasn't proven that he can handle that size, and so he's a guy that would make me a little bit nervous, at that position.
Yeah. Thoughts on Key?
Well, I did think that he played well at Alabama last year, and, when they really needed it, and that helped that game remain as competitive as it was. But it's tough to tell. I mean, there's definitely some red flags with him. So, I mean, you're right. It really just depends where they are on the draft, what they have availability, if they want to trade up to get him at a particular place in the second or third round or something like that. Then it might be worth it, but definitely not with the first pick.
Possibility they may look at the quarterback? You buying into that?
No.
Neither am I.
I don't know.
No,
because I just don't think that Drew has shown any sign of tapering off, and I realize that it can happen pretty quickly, but they were 6th in passing last year, which is maybe tied for the worst that they've been the entire time he was here, but that was by design, so it's not anything to worry about at all, and it's going to be by design again, and he's under contract for 2 more years, and they really like Taysom Hill. I mean, people got to remember, they grabbed Taysom Hill and used an active roster spot on him all year long. Why would they do that? Right. Whereas, I mean, it wasn't. I don't think it was quite the same deal for Garrett Grayson in the latter years of his stay here. And they did it because when he was throwing for the scout team against the first team defense, they saw something they liked. So I think they would have to be really impressed with the quarterback after the kind of investment I feel like they made last year in Taysom Hill to do that. And it's, I don't think necessarily. And then Sean also said he doesn't think this draft has anybody as good as Mahomes, and unless that's a smokescreen, then not going.
Which again, you can't believe anything that's said during this time. That's the one. When he says it, it also makes my antenna go up when he starts talking about smokescreen. Quarterback in this draft, you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I think once you they don't have the picks to maybe, with last year's picks, if there was a guy you liked in the second or third round, maybe. But once you get probably to 27, I mean, Lamar Jackson's even flown up boards. I don't think there's anybody that they're going to want to spend precious picks on early when you've only got one in those first 90. And so I don't see it. I mean, I don't see them really risking too much to trade up and get one or anything like that. Like you mentioned, I think the investment in Hill and Taysom Hill has been significant. I don't think it's the time.
Switch gears to the Zurich Classic of New Orleans, the best field maybe they've ever had at least definitely since they've been at the TBC of Louisiana. Brett, I'll start with you first. Your thoughts on the field and of course the match play, and again how that has really kind of gotten even the novice out there who doesn't watch a lot of golf maybe excited about this tournament this year.
I think the only way you can be disappointed in the field is basically 2 names. One, they had kind of floated the idea that maybe Tiger was ready to come back, and so then of course he doesn't, and that gets you disappointed. Ricky Fowler has been here in the past, and he's a big name player, and he didn't come, and he's kind of a Zurich-sponsored guy, so that might have ruffled some feathers, but for whatever reason, he didn't want to come this year. But then you look at the fact that they have all 4 reigning major winners there at the same time. And that's pretty compelling, I mean, you have Jordan Spieth coming off 2 consecutive third places, including a third at the Masters where he was in contention, and he is the defending British Open champion. You have Koepka making his comeback from 15 weeks off because of a left wrist injury, and he's the defending U.S. Open champion. So even if he's not in full form, and even if he's not necessarily a contender, just being able to see how he's getting back on tour and what kind of force he's going to be going forward is compelling. And then Justin Thomas, PGA champion, and who am I forgetting?
Patrick Reed.
And Patrick Reed, who just won the Masters. Right. I'm going to forget him, talk to him today. But yeah, anyway, you know, yeah, I think that it's, and the other thing that they did, of course, is they changed the format so that it's alternate shot in the last round, which I think makes a big difference, because there's so much less margin for error and so much more pressure on guys to make their shots for two reasons. One, because you don't want to let your teammate down, and two, because it can really screw up the round because the other guy can't make up for it with the best, you know, like in best ball.
Yes. Chris, what could you add? Your thought about the Zurich this weekend? Well,
I mean, I think what's big for getting a lot of these names here is the fact that it's fun. I mean, the guys...
Team play, right?
Yeah, the team play's fun. It's a welcome change. I believe it's a welcome change to the grind of the PGA Tour, and playing solo every weekend. And yeah, that alternate shot is going to create a little bit more pressure, but at the same time, when you're out there with a partner, it's a little bit less pressure. And I think the guys really enjoyed that, and that's why they come to play in Louisiana, and it's the format. And then I was only able to make it out there on the Monday of the playoff last year with just the draft and everything going on. I was up in Philly, but watching that, even just for a couple holes, was very exciting golf, as exciting as I've seen in a while in person. And so I think that's been a welcome change, and you said it. I mean, that's going to get people out there. I would invite people, give it a watch, and I think you'll like what you see as far as the format and the different kind of golfing situations it creates.
Yeah, I would agree with that. My director, William Hills, reminded me about the walk-up music that again, is something that you
That'll be really interesting.
Right, and then, of course, we already know that the Zurich has set the standard for golf tournaments around the country because of, again, the food, the entertainment, everything else that's going on outside of the golf itself. It really is, on a weekend where it's sharing the spotlight with the draft, the NBA playoffs, and the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. It is a go-to event, and I got to give them a lot of credit. Steve Worthy and everybody over there, they've gotten a great feel this year, and the concept now really puts this particular tournament back on the map.
But it's just nice to have a tournament where guys also can show their personality a little more, because you know, as much as I guess our primary concern as sports fans is just how they execute their shots, it's still, professional sports has an entertainment component, and a lot of times when these guys are on their own, they're just so in their own world, you know, that there's not as much interaction where you can see their camaraderie among teammates, and it gives you a better sense of their personality too. Yeah,
and Zurich has been a great sponsor as well. And again, sticking with this city through Katrina and everything else, that's a big part, obviously, of that tournament being the tournament that is. Brett Martel, the Associated Press, Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports, thanks for being with us. Chris, have a great trip out to Oakland.
Thank you.
For the Pelicans, and we'll be checking out all of your reports on Fox 8. Again, thank you for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. You can catch us on Friday nights at 9 o'clock on Pelican Sports Television. That's statewide here in Louisiana. Catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2. The iHeartRadio app is a free download for your smartphone or tablet. If you'd like to download that, you can catch all the great shows in Sports 1280. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. All the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports can be seen at ericasher.com as well. You can also download that Sports 1280 app and check us out there as well. Special thanks to our guests tonight, Chris Hagan and also Brett Martel, also the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Trey Lopez, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. Can't wait to be able to talk about all the great things that happen in sports, from a Zurich Classic champion team to Pelicans in the playoffs, and find out who the next Saints are for next week's show. Thanks for watching tonight. We'll check you out next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com.